We have about 7 years to decrease our carbon footprint before the world becomes unsavable. Sounds like a lot of time, but in reality, it isn't. That's scary. Hello, and welcome back to the Climate Crisis Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the time limit we have left for us to save the planet. So, that might have been quite an alarming start, but sadly, it is not an untrue statement. You may have heard of the climate countdown in New York, and it is currently at 6 years and 182 days from this podcast release. It may seem daunting to have, but we need to be constantly reminded of this because it's dangerous to forget. If this isn't in the forefront of people's minds, then it gets pushed to the back of their minds, and then they're not going to be thinking about it every day. And if they're not thinking about it, then they're not going to be trying to make effective change in order to decrease this problem, and that is very dangerous. The goal of the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement was to avoid raising global warming temperatures to above 1.5 degrees Celsius or 34.7 degrees Fahrenheit, which is basically a point of no return. What this demarcation means is that we don't want global temperatures to raise 1.5 degrees Celsius above what the normal temperature should be for the average of the globe. If if this increase in temperature is reached, problems such as extreme heat waves, destruction of coral reefs, and melting of ice sheets is more than possible to occur. And these problems just continue to create more problems. For example, the melting of ice sheets will create an increase in ocean levels, and an increase in ocean levels will cause flooding, and flooding will cause damage to property and homes, and that could also kill people, and on and on and on. And basically, it's just a domino effect of problems and more problems. We have seen some of the effects of global warming recently in our world. Florida and the Bahamas have recently gotten pretty cold weather in early December, late November. And this isn't usual for that to happen. Usually, both places are warm all year round, and they aren't going to be they aren't going to be experiencing temperatures as low as 40 degrees. In the opposite direction, places in the north haven't been reaching the low temperatures that we should have been reaching and that we were reaching in the past years. In past years, it has been unbearable to go outside during the winter, but nowadays it's between 30 to 40 degrees, which is still pretty cold, but it's not as cold as it should be in late December, early January. Having the pandemic and the lockdown momentarily brought down greenhouse gas emissions by 5.4%, but since then, emissions are quickly returning to pre-pandemic emissions, so basically it just net zero. We just had a little gap of having a decrease in carbon emissions, and we should have been continuing with that process somehow and continuing to lower greenhouse gas emissions so that we aren't reaching that 1.5 degrees Celsius. But once the lockdown was removed, those cars were back on the streets, everything was working again, and those greenhouse gas emissions are rising. US used to be the world's greatest greenhouse gas emitter, but now China has surpassed them and become the number one greenhouse gas emitter, surpassing the US and leaving the US at second, with the European nations at third. The US, European nations, and many other wealthy nations' emissions have been decreasing over the past decade, as you can see in this graph. Since about 2000, most of these places have been slowly decreasing, with the exception of India and China, and they have been increasing. But China's has been increasing a lot larger than the others, and this is basically detracting from the progress that other countries have been making. People still believe that we have a lot of time left before we as a society have to start fixing our mistakes, but after hearing this, I hope you know that the time has come to create some change. The new generation has to step up in government, academia, and industry, and we have to work together in order to save our planet, because unless NASA suddenly finds an inhabitable planet and a method to get there, the Earth truly is the only planet we have. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I know it was a little bit depressing to listen to, but it is very important to know and to act on this topic. So hopefully you learned a little bit from here, and you should tune into the other podcasts I've released, and you should follow my Instagram, subscribe, like, comment, and all the things down there. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.